You need to play Two-Headed Giant for the new Final Fantasy Magic the Gathering set. It is the best way to introduce new players to the game. If you have a friend or significant other that loves Final Fantasy and has been kind of interested in Magic the Gathering, Two-Headed Giant is the best way to do it. In Two-Headed Giant, you get to play as a team, so you can look at each other's cards, strategize. You could even do things like, what do you think? Should I play this one or that one? Yeah, I think you should hold that card for later. Play that one instead. Which makes it so much easier for someone who is overwhelmed by the rules of Magic the Gathering to get into the game and have some fun. You should call your local game store to see if they're doing a Two-Headed Giant pre-release. That way you get to support your local game store and introduce a new friend to Magic the Gathering. Now, I've played a few Two-Headed Giant events, and I've learned a few things about Two-Headed Giant that I'm going to share with you for limited to hopefully help you win a little bit more. What I've noticed first is that black and red are the best colors for Two-Headed Giant because they're going to have the most abilities that target each opponent. And that's the key with Two-Headed Giant. You're playing one team versus another team, but that other team has two opponents. So anything that says you do 1 damage to each opponent is actually going to do 2 damage to the opposing team. So looking at the Final Fantasy set, black mages are going to do a lot of work in your Two-Headed Giant matches, because every black mage says when you cast a non-creature spell, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent. So that's going to be 2 damage to the opposing team every time you cast a non-creature spell. So looking at the black mage cards that are available, you really want to build around cards like Kuja or Vivi if you pull those in your pre-release packs. Another great card would be Black Waltz number 3, and Black Mage's Rod is also going to be a great way to turn any creature into a black mage. There are a few other cards that create black mages. Circle of Power, which is going to draw you 2 cards at the cost of 2 life as well. Cornered by Black Mages, which is going to get an opponent to sacrifice a creature. Not great that they get to choose, but it will create a black mage for you. Queen Brane, which you need to attack with to get a black mage, but with her prowess ability, you could get fancy with some combat tricks. And Mysidian Elder, which is going to give you 2 bodies on 1 card, and one of which is a black mage. Lindblom Industrial Regency is also a great card because you can create a black mage at instant speed and then play the land the next turn. There's some other great cards to be on the lookout for in your pre-release packs. One of which is Malboro, which has Swamp Cycling, so you can use that early in the game, but if you cast it, your opponents go down 2 cards, 4 life, and they have to exile a total of 6 cards from their libraries. You can also look for Hekdies, which is a pretty simple card, but the opposing team will go down 2 cards when it enters the battlefield. Sabotender, which is a pretty simple 2-mana card, can easily rack up 4, 6, 8 damage, assuming your opponents don't deal with it right away. And the Lord Master of Hell, which is the backside of the Emperor of Palamecia, takes a little bit to set up, getting 3 1/1 counters on it, but it's a 2-mana 2/2, and it's a mana dork, and when you get to that backside, it's a pretty big payoff, getting to deal 2x damage to the opposing team when it attacks. The cool thing about the Final Fantasy set is that every color has something that does a little bit better or a little bit different in Two-Headed Giant. So be on the lookout for some of these other cards, such as Summon Shiva, which in its 3rd chapter could draw you 4+ cards because you have 2 opponents. Also on the backside of Joshua Phoenix's Dominant is Phoenix Warden of Fire. Now it is an 8 mana investment to cast it and transform it, but when you do, each time you transform it could do 8 damage to the opposing team, and it's repeatable. So if the opposing team can't answer it, it could be a game ender. In blue and green we have Omega Heartless Evolution, which is 7 mana for an 8/8 that can tap and effectively take 2 creatures out of your opponent's use. We even have a colorless option in Summon Bahamut. Now, it's 9 mana, so the chance of you casting this and getting to the 4th chapter is pretty unlikely, but if you can get there, it is going to end the game. And this is a colorless bomb mythic, you were probably going to run it anyway. Going back to black, we have Jekt Reluctant Guardian, which on its backside can remove 4 creatures from the opposing team, though this is a turn 7 at the minimum. There's also Gaius Van Baelsar, which, given the modes that it has, you could use it to better affect the opposing team and try not to affect yourself and your teammate. We also have Triple Triad in red, which could get you 4 cards to cast each turn cycle, but it is a 6 mana do nothing, so you would want to make sure your teammate has good plays on that turn so that you can set this up for yourself. There are 2 cards that mill each opponent. Hope S-Time, and the Water Crystal. Now, milling both opponents really isn't necessarily better than milling a single opponent in 1v1, but if you can deck either opponent, then the whole entire other team loses, so you can kind of hedge your bets by milling both instead of milling just one. Now here are some cards that might look good in Two-Headed Giant at first glance, but I can tell you they're actually traps and you should probably avoid running them. The first and the biggest trap is Tella the Great Sage. Now its ability looks like it could deal massive damage to the opposing team, but if you look through the available cards in the Final Fantasy set, there are no non-creature spells that cost 8 or more, and there are only 2 that have an X in the cost: Choco Comet and Syncopate. So those are the only 2 ways that you can trigger the massive damage on Tella, so I think you should avoid running it for that ability. Summon Anima is another card that I think is a trap. The ability looks good on paper, but then you realize it's going to be turn 9, maybe 8, before its 3rd chapter goes off, where your opponent sacks 2 creatures and loses 6 life. It seems like a lot of investment, and you have to protect it. Golbez's Crystal Collector also has a really cool ability, but it requires you to get 8 artifacts on the battlefield, and the chances of that happening in a limited environment probably pretty slim. Absolute Virtue is another card that kind of looks like a trap to me, because it says you have protection from your opponents, but that protection doesn't extend to your teammate, so your opponents can still target your teammate. And then 2 cards, Summon Leviathan and Zodiarch Umbral God, target specific types of creatures. Now, if you can build 2 decks with those types of creatures in mind, yes, this could be a big one-sided effect for you and your teammate, but the chances of you building 2 all gods decks or 2 all water creatures decks are pretty low. So I would say watch out, because these effects are going to affect all players, not just your opponents. A few other cards that are a little bit different in Two-Headed Giant: Summon Odin on its 2nd chapter says if it deals combat damage to an opponent, that opponent loses the game. If one opponent loses, the whole team loses. Vaughn's Street Thief works a little bit different because you have to specify which opponent you're attacking in Two-Headed Giant. That seems a little unintuitive because your creatures are always attacking the other team and combat damage affects the other team's life total. But in the case of Vaughn's ability, you do have to declare which opponent you're attacking. Now, the opposing team can block with all of the creatures that they control, just as normal, but you need to declare which player you're attacking first so that the opposing team knows which library you're going to take cards from. Which leads me to my last card, Kefka Court Mage, which will cause all players to discard cards. That includes yourself and your teammate, but you will be the only one who draws cards, not your teammate. Also, with its 8 mana activated ability, when you transform it, the opposing team will sacrifice 2 creatures, and you will get to draw cards when the opposing team loses life. But be aware that losing life happens to the player first, then the team as a whole. So if you dealt 2 combat damage to the opposing team, that technically only happens to 1 opponent, and then that team's life total gets updated. So dealing 2 combat damage would cause you to draw 2 cards, not 4 cards. I hope you found this video helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more Magic the Gathering content, and come back and leave me a comment if you did well at your pre-release event at your local game store.